The stars of the Orion Arm shimmered as they always had, but in the dark between them, fleets died, worlds were broken, and old empires fell to silence. The Veyrathi Dominion, once proud and feared, now watched its borders collapse like sand washed away by a rising tide. For centuries they had ruled with strength, enslaving weaker races, crushing rebellions, and declaring that the stars themselves belonged to them. But now, a new enemy had come, the Charal Swarm. The name itself carried terror. They were not conquerors. They were not rulers. They were hunger given form, an endless tide of teeth, claws, and living ships that spread across the void. They did not negotiate. They did not enslave. They consumed. Entire colonies vanished within weeks. Whole star systems fell without even a signal of distress escaping. The Dominion's fleets had thrown themselves against the swarm again and again, and each time they had been torn apart. The Veyrathi had laughed once, when they first heard rumors of the swarm. They had believed themselves untouchable. Now their laughter was gone, replaced by fear and desperation. The Dominion Council gathered in the shattered capital orbiting the world of Vera Prime. The great spires of their meeting chamber, once built to show power and pride, now carried scars of orbital bombardments. Ships limped through the docks outside, engines flickering, hulls patched with crude metal. Even here, in the heart of their empire, the war had left marks. High Consul Serath, his golden scales dulled with age, raised his voice. "We have lost 1/3 of the Dominion fleet. The colonies of Maltris, Suraeth, and Kalor are gone. The Charal will not stop. They will spread until there is nothing left. We must decide our course." The chamber hissed with anger and fear. Counselors shouted over one another. Some demanded more fleets. Others whispered about abandoning border worlds and retreating inward. But deep inside, they all knew the truth. The Dominion was losing. "We cannot win alone," Serath said, silencing the chamber with the weight of his words. "There is only one choice left to us." The chamber grew colder. Everyone knew what he meant. The humans. The word itself was bitter in their throats. Humanity was not part of the Dominion, nor any galactic council. They had been discovered barely 2 centuries ago, a young race from a small blue planet circling a yellow star. At first, the Dominion had thought little of them, but they had seen the humans fight, first among themselves, then against pirates, then against Dominion slavers who had dared to test them. Humans had not joined the Dominion. They had not begged for protection or trade. Instead, they had stood apart, building fleets of their own, training soldiers who fought like no others. The Dominion remembered too well the battles at the Rim, when Veyrathi ships had tried to seize human colonies. They had expected an easy victory. Instead, entire Dominion fleets had been destroyed. Since then, humanity had been left alone, watched, feared, called barbarians and monsters, and now, the Dominion would have to beg them for help. Serath's words echoed, "We must go to Earth." The journey was long, and every step tasted of shame. The Dominion emissary fleet limped through human-controlled space under escort. Their ships, once symbols of fear, now looked like wounded animals trailing blood. Even the younger crew lowered their heads, ashamed to show their weakness before the humans. At last, Earth came into view. The blue planet hung in the black, a jewel of oceans and clouds surrounded by rings of metal. Stations glittered in orbit. Fleets patrolled with precision. The Dominion emissaries felt small as they approached, for the humans had turned their homeworld into a fortress. The emissaries were received on the surface, in a hall of steel and glass that overlooked a city alive with light. The humans waited for them. Soldiers stood in silent rows, their faces unreadable, their weapons at rest but ready. At the center stood the leaders of the United Terran Directorate. The Veyrathi emissaries stepped forward. Their scaled heads bowed low. For a people that had once enslaved whole races, the act was painful, but the fear of extinction was greater than pride. High Consul Serath's voice trembled as he spoke. We come not as rulers, but as supplicants. The swarm spreads across the stars. It devours all. Our fleets fall. Our worlds burn. Soon they will come here, to you. If the Dominion falls, the path to Sol will lie open, we beg you. Humanity of Earth, help us. Save us. For a long moment, there was silence. The humans did not answer at once. Their faces gave nothing away. The Veyrathi shifted uncomfortably, unused to being ignored. In their empire, no one dared keep them waiting. Here they stood powerless, awaiting judgment like criminals before a court. At last, one human stepped forward. A woman, her uniform dark and simple, her gaze sharp as a blade. She spoke slowly, each word heavy. "You want our help," she said. "Yet I remember the Dominion raids on our colonies. I remember your fleets above Mars, your slavers on Europa, your arrogance when you called us lesser creatures." Sarath's head bowed lower. "We were wrong." The woman's eyes did not soften. "Now you call for mercy." "Yes," Sarath whispered. "Without you, we are lost." The chamber fell silent again. The emissaries waited. They had expected laughter or scorn or rejection. Instead, the humans whispered among themselves, their eyes dark, their voices low. There was no joy in their faces, no triumph at seeing the Dominion broken. There was only calculation. Finally, the human woman spoke again. "Return to your ships. Wait for our answer. We will decide if humanity will fight." The Veyrathi bowed once more and left, hearts heavy with shame and fear. That night, as they looked down at Earth's shining cities from orbit, the Dominion emissaries spoke among themselves. "Do you think they will help us?" One asked. "They must," another replied. "If the swarm destroys us, it will come for them next." But High Consul Sarath said nothing. He had looked into the eyes of the human leader. He had seen no pity there, no warmth. Only something deeper, something colder. The Dominion had begged for mercy, but Sarath wondered if the humans even knew what mercy was. The United Terran Directorate met in secret chambers beneath the surface of Earth. Holograms of fleets and battle maps filled the air. The leaders of humanity studied them with grim focus. Admiral Reyes spoke first. "The Carvel swarm will not stop. If they consume the Dominion, the path to Sol is open. We cannot afford to wait." General Okoye leaned forward. "The question is not if we fight. The question is how we fight, and whether we let the Dominion believe we are saving them, or remind them what we truly are." There was no laughter, no boasting. Only silence as the leaders weighed their choices. Humanity was not moved by pity. Humanity was moved by survival, and survival had made them monsters long before the stars had ever noticed them. The halls of the United Terran Directorate were built deep beneath the surface of Earth, carved into ancient stone and reinforced with steel. There, in the heart of humanity's hidden fortress, the leaders gathered. No sunlight touched the chamber, only the cold blue light of tactical maps and star charts floating in the air. Around the long table sat admirals, generals, and directors, each one hardened by decades of war. Some were scarred soldiers, others sharp-eyed politicians, and a few were cold strategists who had studied conflict like an art. They were united by one truth. Humanity had always fought to survive, and survival demanded clear eyes and cold hearts. Admiral Reyes broke the silence. His voice was calm but carried weight. "The Dominion has begged for help. Their fleets are broken, their pride gone. The swarm devours them, and soon it will reach our borders. The question before us is simple. Do we fight now, or wait until the fire is at our doorstep?" General Okoye leaned forward, her dark eyes steady. "We cannot wait. Every world the swarm consumes makes it stronger. If we allow the Dominion to fall, we will face the swarm alone, and though humanity is strong, even we cannot fight the endless tide if it grows unchecked." Another voice spoke, Director Havel of the Science Council. "We know little about the swarm, but we know enough. They do not stop. They do not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They consume. If they are not ended, then Sol will burn one day too." The table fell quiet. No one doubted her words. Finally, the president of the Directorate, Elena Marquez, raised her head. She was a woman of calm presence, her voice carrying neither anger nor mercy. "Then it is decided," she said. "Humanity will fight." There was no cheer, no applause, only grim nods. "But," she added, her eyes narrowing, "we will not fight as the Dominion expects. They think we will stand beside them, hand in hand like allies. They are wrong. We will fight this war our way. The swarm will learn what humanity is, and the Dominion will learn why they once feared us." The Dominion emissaries waited in orbit, their ships circling Earth like tired vultures. Days passed and no answer came. Each day their unease grew. Finally, they were summoned again. This time they were not brought to Earth's shining cities. They were led to a stark chamber aboard a Terran warship in high orbit. The humans met them there, not as hosts, but as commanders. High Consul Sarath bowed low, his scaled head nearly touching the floor. "Have you decided?" he asked, his voice trembling. Admiral Reyes stepped forward. He was tall, gray-haired, his eyes sharp like cold iron. "We have decided," he said. "Humanity will fight the swarm." The Veyrathi emissaries exhaled in relief. Some even whispered thanks, but their relief froze when Reyes raised his hand. "Do not mistake us," he continued. "We do not fight for you. We do not fight for the Dominion. We fight because the swarm is a threat to us. You are collateral. If you survive, it will be because our path of war cuts through the swarm. If you fall, it will be because you are too weak to keep up." The words hit the Veyrathi like blows. Sarath lifted his head slowly, eyes wide. "But knowing that we came to you for mercy. We thought—" Reyes interrupted him with a voice like steel. "Mercy? We are not saviors. We are not protectors. We are humans, and humans do not beg and they do not forgive. If you want to live, then follow in our shadow. But know this, where we go, the stars will burn. Do you still wish for our help?" The Veyrathi emissaries stood in silence. None dared to refuse. At last, Sarath bowed once more. "Yes, we will follow." "Then prepare yourselves," Reyes said. The reckoning begins. The humans moved with terrifying speed. Within days, fleets mobilized from the Sol system and beyond. Orbital shipyards that circled Mars and Jupiter released warships like hounds slipping from their chains. Carriers the size of cities glided into the void, their hulls black and silent. Cruisers armed with rail cannons and plasma lances moved into formation. Stealth ships vanished into the dark, unseen but deadly. On Earth's surface, soldiers gathered in ranks. They were not like the Dominion's troops dressed in ceremonial armor and banners of pride. The Terran soldiers wore black armor of composite steel, their helmets hiding all expression. They moved with precision, their weapons strapped to their sides, their faces unreadable. The Dominion emissaries were allowed to watch. They had asked for human aid, and now they saw what that aid looked like. It was not comforting. In one training ground, Sarath and his aides stood behind glass as human shock brigades drilled. They watched as the soldiers dropped from orbit in capsules, landing with thunder and rising as one, weapons blazing. They watched them storm bunkers, clear cities, and cut through simulated swarms with ruthless coordination. There was no wasted motion, no hesitation. Each soldier fought as if born for war. "These are not soldiers," whispered one of Sarath's aides. "They are predators." Sarath said nothing. But in his heart he agreed. The first strike came swiftly. Human fleets did not move to defend Dominion worlds as expected. Instead, they attacked deep into swarm territory. Stealth ships slipped past enemy lines, planting beacons that guided fleets into ambushes. Human warships did not line up for battle like the Dominions had. They hunted. A swarm hive fleet, larger than any the Dominion could face, was drawn into a trap at the edge of a dying star. Human cruisers hid in the radiation storms, striking suddenly with volleys of railgun fire that tore living ships apart. Carriers unleashed drones armed with nuclear charges, swarming into the enemy ranks. Then, with perfect timing, the humans collapsed the star itself. The explosion consumed the hive fleet in a blaze of fire brighter than any sun. From afar, Dominion observers watched in horror and awe. They had never imagined war could be fought like this, not with honor, not with formation, but with cunning and cruelty. "Madness," whispered one Dominion captain. "They destroy stars themselves." "No," Sarath said softly. "Not madness, strategy." Word spread quickly. Across the Dominion, soldiers and civilians alike heard stories of what the humans were doing. They heard of swarm fleets vanishing into black holes created by human weapons. They heard of shock brigades landing on infested worlds, burning nests from the inside with fire and steel. They heard of human fleets that never stopped moving, always hunting, always killing. And with each story, fear grew. The Dominion had begged for mercy. Instead, they had unleashed something far more terrifying than the swarm itself. Weeks passed, and the tide of war began to shift. The swarm was no longer advancing freely. Where humans appeared, the tide turned red with destruction. Whole sectors were cleared, nests wiped out in days. The Dominion celebrated quietly, but their joy was shadowed by unease. For with every victory, they saw the truth more clearly. The humans did not fight like allies. They fought like executioners. One night aboard his ship, Sarath stood by the viewport staring at the stars. He spoke quietly to his aide. "We thought we were calling for saviors," he said. "We thought humanity would protect us. But we were wrong. They are not protectors. They are reckoning." His aide hesitated. "Do you regret asking for their help?" Serath's golden eyes narrowed. Regret? No, without them we would already be dead. But fear, yes. For when the swarm is gone, what will the humans do next? And who will they turn their gaze upon? The swarm had begun to fear them too. For the first time in their endless expansion, they faced prey that struck back harder than predators. Entire hives changed course, avoiding human fleets. Yet the humans hunted them down regardless, refusing to allow escape. The Dominion had asked for mercy, and humanity had answered, with war beyond imagining. The galaxy had seen war before. Empires had risen and fallen. Armies had clashed, fleets had burned, and worlds had been scarred. But nothing in history matched what came when humanity unleashed its full strength. The swarm had thought itself unstoppable. For countless centuries it had moved from system to system, consuming without pause. But now, for the first time, it had met prey that did not run, prey that hunted back. Humanity. The Dominion watched in silence as reports came from the front. What they saw filled them with awe and dread. On the world of Drethos, a colony already half devoured, the swarm had dug deep tunnels beneath the crust. Dominion soldiers had tried to fight them there and had been slaughtered in hours. When humans arrived, they did not fight in the tunnels. They poisoned them. Drones dropped charges that released fire and gas, turning every tunnel into a burning grave. When the flames cleared, nothing moved below the surface. On the asteroid fields of the Narrow Belt, the swarm tried to hide its breeding ships among rocks and shadows. The Dominion fleets would have searched for weeks to find them. The humans did not search. They turned the entire asteroid belt into a weapon. Mines were planted on every rock, and when the swarm ships moved, the mines ignited, collapsing the belt into a storm of fire and stone. The breeding ships were crushed before they could escape. Again and again, humanity struck with the same cold precision. They never fought on the enemy's terms. They never gave the swarm a chance to gather strength. Every battle was a trap, every fight a hunt. The Dominion soldiers who survived these campaigns whispered among themselves. "These are not warriors," one Veyrathi captain said. "They are predators. They fight like the swarm itself, but colder, smarter." Another shook his head. "No, the swarm kills because it must. The humans kill because they choose to." The swarm began to change its behavior. Where once it charged without fear, now it hesitated. Where once it devoured colonies without pause, now it avoided systems guarded by human fleets. It had never known fear, but fear now drove it. Admiral Reyes stood aboard his flagship, the Valiant, as reports came in. He studied the maps with calm eyes. "They are learning," he said. General Okoye nodded beside him. "They will adapt. They always adapt. The swarm survives by changing, but so do we." Reyes allowed the faintest smile. "Yes, but there is one difference. We are not afraid to burn everything behind us." The Dominion counselors received reports of victories, but with each victory came unease. High Consul Serath listened as his aides read the latest dispatches. "The humans have destroyed 3 hive fleets in the last cycle," one said. "The swarm retreats from entire sectors. Worlds we thought lost are free again." The council chamber filled with murmurs. "Relief, yes, but also fear." Serath lifted his hand. "And what of the survivors on those worlds?" The aide hesitated. "Few remain. On Drethos, none survived. On Kalor, the cities are ashes. On Sarath, the humans burned the forests to root out the nests. The planet is dead, but the swarm is gone." Silence filled the chamber. The words hung heavy. The Dominion had begged for saviors. But what they had found was not salvation. It was survival at any cost. Humanity did not care for the worlds they saved. They cared only for victory. On the front lines, the truth was even clearer. A Dominion officer named Kareth served aboard a Veyrathi cruiser attached to a human fleet. At first, he had felt pride to fight alongside them. But pride turned to dread as he watched their methods. One night after a battle near the Vale Nebula, Kareth stood with a human soldier in the hangar. The soldier was tall, armored, his helmet removed to reveal hard eyes and a scarred face. "You do not fight like us," Kareth said quietly. The soldier gave him a cold look. "We fight to win." "But you burn whole worlds," Kareth whispered. "You destroy even when you could save." "Why?" The human's voice was flat. "Because if we leave anything alive, it comes back. We don't have the luxury of mercy." Kareth shivered. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of a truth he did not want to face. The swarm tried one last great push. A hive fleet larger than any seen before gathered near the binary stars of Kethra. The Dominion expected the humans to fortify, to defend. Instead, they advanced. The human fleet entered the system like shadows. Stealth ships scattered first, planting beacons in the dark. Then the main fleet arrived. Carriers released drones by the thousands, flooding space with deadly machines. Cruisers struck from every angle, railguns tearing holes through living ships. And then, the humans used their greatest weapon, a device known only as the Sun Hammer. It was planted deep in the smaller star of the system. When it ignited, the star collapsed in a chain reaction. Light brighter than 1,000 suns exploded outward. The swarm fleet was consumed in fire, every ship burned to dust. The Dominion ships, warned ahead of time, had fled to safety zones. Even from a distance, the light blinded them. When their vision cleared, the system was empty. The swarm fleet was gone, but so was the star. Kethra's smaller sun was dead, and with it every world that had circled it. The Dominion Council raged when they learned the truth. "They killed a star," one shouted. "They destroyed an entire system." Serath only bowed his head. "Yes, and they won." The galaxy began to whisper. Stories spread across every corner of the Orion Arm. Stories of human fleets that hunted like wolves, of soldiers who fought without fear, of weapons that could kill suns. The swarm feared them. The Dominion feared them. Even neutral worlds far from the war spoke of them with trembling voices. They no longer called humans saviors. They called them something else. Monsters. One night, Serath stood again at the viewport of his ship, staring at the stars. He thought of the emissary's first plea on Earth, of the shame he had felt. And now he wondered if shame had been better than this new fear. His aide approached quietly. "High Consul, the humans have won another victory." "The swarm is breaking," Serath nodded slowly. "Yes, they are breaking. But so are we," his aide frowned. "I don't understand." Serath's voice was low, heavy. "Do you not see? The swarm feared us once, now they fear the humans. And soon when the swarm is gone, the humans will stand alone at the top. And we will be beneath them." He closed his eyes. "We begged for mercy, but humanity has none to give. They are the monsters of Earth, and we unleashed them. The war was not over. The swarm still held worlds, still consumed stars at the edges of the map. But for the first time in living memory, it was retreating, and in its place a new terror rose. The Dominion had wanted protectors. Instead, they had found predators, and now the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if those predators would stop once their prey was gone. For months, the humans had struck with unrelenting fury. The swarm, once unstoppable, was broken and scattered. Where its fleets had once poured across the Orion Arm, now only fragments remained, hiding in dark systems and forgotten nebulae. The humans hunted them without rest. Every time a nest was discovered, it was destroyed. Every time a hive ship appeared, it was erased. The galaxy watched in silence. For the first time in centuries, there was hope. Hope that the swarm could be defeated. Hope that the endless tide of hunger could finally be stopped. But alongside hope came fear. Fear of the ones who carried the fire. Humanity. The last great battle came in the void around the dead star of Velkaris. Here the swarm had gathered its final strength. Dozens of hive ships, swollen with biomass, circled the remains of shattered worlds. The Dominion fleets would have been powerless before them, but the humans did not hesitate. The valiant Admiral Reyes's flagship led the charge. Human fleets entered the system from every vector, striking like blades in the dark. Railguns fired, missiles screamed through the void, and drones swarmed in clouds of steel. The swarm fought back with desperation. Their living ships tore through the darkness, their claws and beams cutting into human hulls. But the humans did not stop. They closed the trap, tightening like a noose. General Okoye commanded the shock brigades. From orbit, pods rained down upon the infested husks of Velkaris's moons. Soldiers poured out, their black armor glinting in the light of battle, their weapons spitting fire. They cleared nests room by room, street by street, leaving nothing alive behind them. Above, the sunhammer weapons ignited once more. 2 hive ships were torn apart in an explosion brighter than lightning. The swarm screamed through the void, but there was no mercy. Hours passed, then days. The battle did not end until the last hive ship was destroyed. The last nest burned, and when the silence came, it was final. The swarm was gone. The news spread like fire. Across the galaxy, species who had once hidden in fear now cheered. The endless enemy was destroyed. The Dominion declared victory, their leaders praising humanity in public speeches, claiming that together they had won the war. But in their private chambers, the truth weighed heavy. They knew it had not been together. It had been humanity alone. High Consul Serath traveled again to Earth, this time not in desperation but in gratitude. His ship entered Sol space under escort, and once more he stood in the halls of the Directorate. He bowed low before President Marquez, his golden scales gleaming under the lights. On behalf of the Dominion, he said, I offer our thanks. You have saved us from extinction. You have saved the galaxy. We owe you our lives, our worlds, our future. Whatever tribute you ask, we shall pay it. Whatever alliance you seek, we shall give it. His words were heavy with sincerity. The Dominion had been proud once, but pride had burned away in the fire of survival. Now they would humble themselves before humanity if it meant safety. But President Marquez did not smile. Her eyes were steady, her voice calm but cold. You misunderstand us, she said. We did not fight for you. We did not fight for the Dominion. We fought because the swarm was a threat to us. Do not mistake survival for kindness. Serath lifted his head slowly, his voice trembling. But you saved us.
Does that not mean Marquez cut him off?
We did not save you. You lived because you stood in the shadow of our fire. That is all. The words silenced the chamber. Serath lowered his gaze, shame filling him once again. In the weeks that followed, the Dominion tried again and again to reach out. They offered trade, tribute, alliance. They offered to share their remaining fleets, their technology, their wealth. But each time humanity refused. The Directorate sent the same message over and over. We do not need your tribute. We do not need your alliance. We do not need you. The Dominion counselors raged in private. Why will they not accept? One demanded. Do they mean to rule us through fear? Serath shook his head. No, they mean nothing. That is what makes it worse. They do not care for us at all. Across the galaxy, the whispers grew louder. Humanity had destroyed the swarm, yes, but they had done it with weapons that shattered stars, with soldiers who killed without hesitation, with fleets that never rested. And now, when victory was theirs, they asked for nothing. No land, no tribute, no rule. It was not mercy. It was indifference, and indifference was more frightening than conquest. On a frontier station near the rim, a Veyrathi officer overheard human soldiers speaking. One asked the other, Do you think the swarm is really gone? The other shook his head. There's always something out there. Another enemy will come. There always is. And when they do, the soldier's voice was flat. We'll do what we always do. We'll fight. And we'll win. Because that's what it means to be human. The Veyrathi officer shivered. There had been no pride in the soldier's voice, no joy, no hatred. Only certainty. High Consul Serath returned to Vera Prime, his heart heavy. Before the council, he spoke the truth. The swarm is gone, he said. But humanity remains. And they are worse, the counselors argued. Some calling him a coward, others saying he exaggerated. But Serath stood firm. You did not see them, he said quietly. You did not look into their eyes. We begged for mercy and they gave none. They saved us, yes, but not because they cared. They saved us because it suited them. And now we live only because they allow it. The chamber fell silent. In time, peace returned to the stars. The colonies were rebuilt. Trade routes opened again. Species that had hidden now returned to the light. But beneath the surface of every world, fear remained. Children grew up hearing stories of the swarm, but they also grew up hearing stories of humanity. Stories of fleets that destroyed suns. Stories of soldiers who never stopped. Stories of the monsters of Earth. And in every corner of the galaxy, one truth was spoken in whispers. The swarm had been the great hunger, but humanity was something greater still. Not hunger. Not mercy. Reckoning. On Earth, President Marquez stood alone in her chamber, looking out at the night sky. The war was over, but she knew another would come one day. Another enemy. Another threat, she whispered softly to herself. We will be ready. Her reflection in the glass looked back at her. Cold. Steady. Unbroken. Because that was what it meant to be human.